Hello and welcome to Camp Xtras. Pinball is one of those classic pieces of gaming that has been around way before the advent of arcade cabinets, yet as soon as the home video game systems hit the market, pinball has always been present. Well, I recently picked up Pro-Pinball out of my collection for the PlayStation, and it's an interesting pinball game to say the least. And let me tell you about my experience and give you some history as well. All footage was captured off of a PS2, and let's go ahead and hop into this one.
Get the ball! Extra ball! Mission activated.
We can trace Pro-Pinball back to Empire Interactive. They opened their doors in the United Kingdom in 1987. From that point on, they would publish a ton of PC titles. Yet, into the early to mid-90s, pinball recreations in video games were becoming a strong genre on the PC. Pinball had always been on home video game consoles, but the physics and graphics weren't perfect, but on the PC they were starting to catch up. Of course, one of the biggest pinball releases of the mid-90s would be 1995's Full Tilt Pinball, which you might know for the one pinball table, Space Cadet, the pinball table that came with every version of Windows at that time. Yet Adrian Barrett and Richard Horrocks were tasked with making a pinball table for Star Trek: The Next Generation for Empire. They would lose that license, but it was that team that would take that concept and rework it. They would do it under the development company Cunning Developments, and with that, we would get the first ever entry into the Pro Pinball series. Pro Pinball The Web would release first on the PlayStation in Europe in July 1996 and would not see an American release till that September, with a name change to just Pro Pinball. It would also see a Saturn and PC release as well, and from my personal history, this game has just always stared at me from the shelf, but I've never picked it up until recently when I needed to fill in a bit of time. I do have to say I think pinball is fun, but I'm not an expert, so this is not from the perspective of a huge pinball guy, just someone looking for a quick bit of fun. So let me tell you how that went with a review. One of the biggest elements that's going to catch you off guard as soon as you open this game is that it is one table. Not even two, it is just one, and you know the PlayStation can do better than that. I get one table on a lesser console, but it could have used at least one more. Not only that, but the load times to get to this one table are pretty abysmal, so I feel like this game is a bit hindered by lack of content. Though I will say, don't let that ruin all the fun, because the one table you do get is pretty entertaining. It's called The Web, and it's got your regular pinball setup. You launch your ball, and you hit flippers on either side of the table, and there's an additional one higher up. You use these flippers to keep your ball in play to get high scores. There is more to this though to spice it up. The pinball table is set up by a loose plot involving what I believe are invading spider aliens and battles against bikers. It's a bit of an odd concept, but I kinda like weird stuff, so it worked for me. Around the table are multiple ramps, bumpers in the back, and a few places where you can lock your ball. Your goal is to get missions, and these missions will ask you to hit specific points on the table multiple times with an overall goal to complete these missions and get points. The design is easy to understand, and even though you might lose a lot at first, you will eventually master where to hit and the timing you need to keep the ball in play. It's an easy learning curve, and though I found the table might be too simple, I think that's more in line with what I feel is this game's dedication to realism. This looks like a table you would find at an arcade, and it feels like one too. The physics in this game are spot on. The weight of the ball is perfect, and the way the balls fall and hit things is perfectly done. The feeling works with the simplicity in a way that makes the whole experience addictive. You can understand the rules quickly, yet mastering it is a great time. I found myself getting the hang of the missions, and I was starting to see my score rise steadily. Though I will say there is an insta-loss tunnel on the left, and it felt like sometimes the ball was attracted to it, more than it should have, but yet I will say it was still great to keep going. I was stuck to this game with one table for way longer than I expected. Pro Pinball has good physics, and it's a solid and fun table with a good rule set, and it actually is quite fun. Though I won't say it's perfect, it still needs more content. There is a surprising lack of things to do, and this one table is pretty basic. It feels so limited here, but it is at least a good time. Sound-wise, I feel Pro-Pinball does a good job of selling the authentic pinball experience that it's striving for. The machine sounds come through well. I love the sounds of you hitting targets and the tactile feel of the flippers moving and all of the general chaos of the electronic noises. It's meant to be an overwhelming mix of lights and sounds to make the action stand out the whole time you're playing. It all comes together to form a cohesive whole. It's the same with the music, which is a nice mix of cheesy rock tunes, all with a bit of distortion, as if they're coming through the pinball table speakers. Every song matches that rockin' biker theme, but there's a mission where you're in an elevator, and that music is really fun. And also, all the mission information is displayed on a dot matrix display, and it's got some fun art to go along with it. You even get a fun little screen-only minigame at one point. I feel like the pinball machine comes together graphically, and it's got a nice look for a PS1 game. It's static, but the art of the web is undoubtedly unique. It's got that classic 3D rendered look, and it gives off a nostalgic feeling. Though they are striving for realism, and you can feel that with the style. Everything here feels authentic, and all of the noises and machine elements feel real, with a design that's really nice. Overall, it has a solid sound and art design. For a game with only one pinball machine, it's pretty addictive. At face value, I thought this game wouldn't deliver, but the web manages to be a solid simulation. It's helped by an authentic feeling from the noises to the physics, and you can tell the creators loved pinball and wanted to deliver that feeling to the living room. Though I do wish there was a bit more in this package, I have a hard time disliking this game in any way. If you can find this one cheap, I'd say it's definitely worth playing. I have now reviewed 8 PS1 games here on Camp Xtras, and this one is going to enter in at number 3. Though that is pretty high now, I think as we move on, it's going to be more of a mid-tier game. It's better than V-Rally because that game has control issues which are hard to get over, but Pro-Pinball was fundamentally sound. Yet Air Combat was much better in terms of lasting impact and the amount of content it gave you. Unfortunately, Pro-Pinball does not have any reviews logged on Metacritic to get an aggregate score. IGN would give it an 8, saying that one downside was that it was only one table, but otherwise it felt great. EGM wouldn't give it a score, but they seemed very positive in their review, yet GameSpot would give it a 5 out of 10, saying that it was a very convincing simulation, but just lacked content. It seemed that sentiment wouldn't affect anything though, as this series would continue on and would stick with the one table per game design. They did seem to stick around in popularity too, because I've seen a lot of memories for this game during my research, and a lot of these tables would eventually become a part of compilation packs. Yet, after a bit, the team of Adrian Barrett and Richard Horrocks, who were the creators of the series, would break off and start their own studio called Fuse, and you might know them for making those Nintendo pinball games, Mario Pinball Land and Metroid Prime Pinball. And unfortunately, this company would nearly go bankrupt, and they would change their name to Silverball Studios, and then they would later be acquired by another company, giving them a really odd legacy. But the legacy of this game and series still seem to be strong. Any research I did was full of people wanting to play this game today. And fortunately, one of the tables that was released, not this one, did get a modern release. On Backlogged, only 45 people have claimed to have played this game, with an average score of 2.9, though every written review on there is a 3-star review. But be sure to let me know how you felt about this one in the comments. Everybody's opinion is important. But that does wrap it up for this review. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, it really helps me out in the algorithm. Subscribe to keep up with more retro gaming content, and check out my main channel, Camp Xbox, for retro Xbox content. And I'll see you here next time at Camp Xtras.